so much for joining us for this live webinar, Solving Data Mapping with a no-code and automated approach to keep up with ever-increasing data sources and SaaS. I'm Robert Bateman. I'm the head of content at GRC World Forums, and I'll be moderating this session today. So data volumes are increasing exponentially, and companies need seamless and trustworthy technology to help them keep track of their data sources and to know what personal data is in their control. So during this webinar, we'll be discussing how businesses can keep up to date with evolving data flows and regulations in 2022 and beyond, why the future is in no-code, quick to set up automated data mapping tools that reduce privacy and security risks, simplify data rights fulfillment, and save precious resources. So to discuss this, I'm joined here by Kobi Nissan, who is co-founder and CPO of Mine, and Justyna Rajacki-Pavianskiania, who is privacy process engineer at Vinted. So before we get on to some questions and a discussion, I'd just like to ask you both to introduce yourselves and tell us a bit about what you do. Should we start with you, please, Kobi?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. Really happy to be here today, and thank you for joining. My name is Kobi Nissan. I'm a co-founder and the chief product officer here at Mine. So probably most of you already know Mine from our B2C on our B2C capacity. We have a product for consumers to help them identify their personal footprint, understand what the user is not using, and helping them to reduce the data exposure, data risks by leveraging on privacy regulations. Already saved over 300,000 users from a data breach to date. So that's, but today I'm on a different hat on our B2B capacity. Mine also have we also have our Mine Privacy Ops solution for businesses, where we provide a full end-to-end suite for companies to support their entire privacy compliance stack, from data mapping to data minimization processes, data source discoveries, workflow discovery, PII tracing. That's the first module. The DSR handling with automations, consent management, vendor risk assessment, and so on and so forth. So all in an automated way. So that's the capacity that I'm here today with you.
Thanks, Kobi. And Justyna, could you tell us a bit about Vinted and what you do there, please?
Yeah, so hello, everyone. Thank you for having me and for this great opportunity to share my knowledge with you. So, as you know, my name is Justyna. Currently, I'm a privacy process engineer at Vinted, mostly working with data mapping. Vinted business is about providing possibility for users to sell and buy second-hand clothes from each other. Before Vinted, I've been working as a lawyer in privacy field and law firm, and before that as a consultant also in privacy field and at a consultancy firm. So I've been working with the privacy law, with the data protection. I started work like few months before GDPR entered into force. And despite the fact that from that moment we knew bare minimum about how to interpret the rules, regulations provided in GDPR, now it seems that we are still in the gray zone, despite the fact that we have a lot of courts decisions, we have DPB guidelines, fines from authorities. But even though the question is how to appropriately do data mapping and to be compliant is still relevant and is important for all of companies, and the compliance issue is still here. Yeah.
Thanks, Justyna. That's a very distinguished career in the field then. And I think you're right that even with the number of decisions and guidelines we have now on GDPR interpretation, it seems to get more and more complicated, looking at how to apply those things in the real world, so to speak. So let's move to our first question, and I'd like to start with Kobi on this one, please. Why is automated data mapping, and perhaps we could touch upon data mapping in general, so important right now? Kobi.
So yeah, I think it will be interesting. I think I'm bringing the vendor perspective. So I'm going to share with you what we see happening in the market from the lenses of different clients, different scale. We see that data mapping is not only a problem of the large enterprises. It is now a problem of all organization in all sizes, shapes, and forms. We see that because almost every company has to have their proper privacy program in place. Now, in parallel, we see that global awareness is really, changing to the good in that aspect. Privacy laws are evolving. We see more countries in the US and others that are implementing those privacy laws. And in parallel, we see that the compliance risks and the stacks are growing. So that's like in general what we see as a trend in the market. Now, when we look at it from the company's lenses, it becomes even more tricky because we've seen lots of companies that have ran a manual process to map their internal tech stack and processing activities and all this know-how about what they do with the data that they have across the organization. The problem is that twofold. First, I just had a conversation today with a client. They have over 300 data sources inside the company and a similar number of processing activities inside. How do you even extract the proper insights in order to take a decision of what you need to do next in order to minimize the data? Maybe you have some unauthorized access to certain data sources. Maybe the retention policy was not adhered inside the organization. So only to have a tool in order to capture and extract the actionable insight is something that's really painful and a big need for organization as we see it today. Not to speak also about the data mapping process itself. Data, even if you created something manually, in 2 months from now, things are changing. You have new employees that are joining the companies. The company is evolving. You acquire new services, new data sources. So keeping up with this ever-changing pace becomes more and more and more trickier. And then the result is that companies oftentimes put more human resources on that. In parallel, I will sum up by the fact that I don't think that this is a problem that will be 100% automated without any human intervention. Of course not. But I do think from what we see today is that we can empower the privacy persona in the organization with so many insights, tools, and capabilities to hand them with the superpowers to do their job properly.
Good, thank you, Kobi. Now you mentioned there, well, you shared something with Justina there that compliance is getting more complicated. You referenced different laws that are springing up worldwide. Justina, do you agree that things getting more complicated in your day-to-day work? How does it impact on your daily tasks, particularly with reference to data mapping?
Yeah, so how we understand data mapping at Vinted is to be compliant with Article 30 GDPR. So what does it mean for a large company as Vinted? Is that, from a few people, Vinted now has more than 1,000 employees and more than 60 million users as a marketplace. And the company does not stop growing. The company grows fast. And it means that we have like more and more processing activities. We have more assets, and we have to map it, like all the processing activities, how data is collected, where it is stored, how long it is stored, to evaluate the risks, establish the legal basis, and so on and so forth. So it means that as company is growing, the need for data mapping is also growing. And for us, it means, the necessity to hire more people or to outsource the companies that would help us to do data mapping, as we don't have automated solution yet. And it means that it will cost more money and more time for us, and more human resources even. So yeah, as you see, compliance costs a lot without automation solutions so far.
So interesting, Justina, you mentioned Article 30 there, the record of processing activities, and that's one of the main reasons you conduct data mapping exercises. Are there any other compliance considerations there? Does it help you in any other aspect of GDPR or data protection compliance outside of Article 30? Good quality data mapping process.
Yeah, of course it would help, as we have also the principles established in GDPR. For example, data minimization principle. We could find the information, the data that we have, and to decide which data is not longer necessary for us, or maybe we can reduce the usage of the data and can keep growing with a smaller amount of data. Also, it would help us to automatize and to find out data retention periods in different systems, and to inform us maybe somehow when data is not necessary to store longer. It is necessary to delete. It is time to delete the data, and so on. So yeah, it would help us also to be compliant with the principles established in GDPR.
Good. So you mentioned several of the principles, GDPR data minimization, storage limitation. Kobi, are there any other benefits you've seen of data mapping from the clients you work with? For example, well, do you have any suggestions there? I think one benefit we may have discussed previously regarding legacy applications. Do you want to talk a bit about that?
Yeah, 100%. Before I dive into that, I will answer that in a sec. I think that in general, it's data mapping. I want to compliment on what Justina just mentioned. I think it's a problem of companies, in almost every size, and not only due to the Article 30 and the ROPA, even companies that present in other jurisdictions and not need to be compliant with GDPR specifically. They need to answer questions. If you are data processors, for example, how do you keep track with the data retention and deletion commitment that you have in your contract commitments? Or if you are a data controller, how do you keep track with the on-the-fly privacy approvals and your team is giving to the organization? So you need to answer to cater to those answers in almost every regulation out there, even if you don't call it directly ROPA. Now, to answer, this is why we see that as a problem that can cater for a company in any jurisdiction and in all size, shape, or form, in one way or the other. In terms of the benefits or the use cases for data mapping, so I will emphasize the need for the ROPA, the DPIA, the retention period, all the GDPR principles. Definitely, I will add to that once you have established an automated solution, you can discover things that you didn't have access to them in the past. So, for example, if you keep on monitoring the tech stack that you have, the data sources that keep on being accumulated to your system, and the ones that are being reduced, the one that you are not using anymore, you can start discovering shadow IT issues. If you have an employee that left the company and they still have access to a certain system, and the system is still holding a PII but is not monitored in the organization. So maybe this will be missed out if you are running a manual process, but if you have an automated tool, you will be able to cater for shadow IT issues as well. If you want to have a vendor risk assessment, or you want to mitigate or minimize the access of employees, the unauthorized access of employees to certain data sources. So sometimes you will see people in the organization that will feel comfortable in giving access to another employee to a system with highly sensitive information, but they are unauthorized to do something like that. And maybe the organization, from a human error, miss that out. So if you have an automated solution in place, those things will be under control, and you will be able to cater for those as well. All those things that are left outside of your radar when you do things manually.
Interesting. So those are, some of those things are not what I would normally associate with a data mapping exercise. For example, the sort of identity and access management. But I can see how they link, because of course, when you know what data you have, you know where it all is, then you're able to control who can access it. A quick question, Justina, is where does Vinted operate? Are you GDPR only in your compliance considerations, or are there other jurisdictions where Vinted delivers services?
Mostly Vinted operates within European Union, but we also have markets in Canada and US as well.
And so do you operate a different privacy program across those jurisdictions, or how does it work?
Of course, we take into consideration that different laws applies also in those jurisdictions, but we take GDPR as a standard and use it across the company. And also GDPR is the main let's say, rule which we follow for our privacy program, and also our privacy policies are made based on GDPR requirements.
Okay, good. So it's a kind of floor for your privacy program across the whole company. It's based around GDPR because that's the highest level, I suppose, that you need. Okay, good. So moving on then to our next question. I'll direct this towards you first, Justina, and please do come in, Kobi, on it too. How do you keep up with evolving data sources and flows today?
Yeah. So we don't have any automated solutions yet, but I hope in future we will have. Maybe we will find one which can be applicable for our company as well. So far, we have a few solutions how to keep up-to-date records of processing activities. And so those solutions are, first of all, we have dedicated privacy champions in each team. So there are persons, the main contact persons who knows all processes that it's happening in the particular teams, as Vinted is mostly based on teams, that is responsible for different areas. So those people, they provide us information about any ideas, tests, or new projects that are going to happen, new tools that they are going to buy, vendors that they are going to communicate, or I know tools that they are going to try, and so on. So this keeps us up to date. Also, we are planning to have one entry point for data mapping team is like a ticketing system where also people could provide us information, and we could see the traceability of provided answers, advices, and also to map all the data easily. So as you see, as I mentioned, we have a dedicated data mapping team in our company, which is working mostly with data mapping, of course. And we map data flows, assets, and vendors, and keeping records of processing activities up to date. So yeah, so as you see, mostly we have like a manual work. So far, no automated solution. But the thing is that it's not that we don't ever think about it or don't want to have it. We tried few automated solutions, but it seems that some of them, they are not applicable for companies that they have like difficult infrastructure, complex infrastructure, as and the marketplace is complex, is the complex solution. Marketplace is the complex business, itself, that requires a lot of knowledge, and keep them safe and secure all the time. So not all the solutions can have an integrations with our systems, and or if they do have, then it takes ages to implement them. So
okay,
yeah.
Interesting. So you have tried a bit of automation, but you felt you struggled with the size of your company meant that you
Yeah,
found
it seems that it's applicable to small and medium companies, but difficult to find a solution which can be applicable to large companies.
So I'd like to bring Kobi in on that one. Before I do, we have had a message in from the audience here. Not really a question, although there is a question mark. That will be that must be a very labor-intensive and resource-consuming process. How do you keep up? I was also wondering, Isina, so you have a team dedicated to data mapping, but your company is growing,
Yeah.
as you say. Does that, I mean, does that give you the level of flexibility you need? Do you find it's a very resource intensive process for your team? Data mapping.
It is. Actually, it is very intensive process, and to absorb all the information every day, which is changing from time to time, it's not an easy task for human beings.
Yeah. So, Kobi, do you want to come in and add anything to what Yasina said? Maybe respond to what she said.
Yes, definitely. I think that a couple of points there. First of all, I really bond to what Justina said earlier about choosing a certain approach as a guideline. She mentioned GDPR. So I think that this is something that we are pushing forward in the product as well. We are looking for a certain golden rule, trying to oversimplify the process to get you, to find this mechanism that will put you in compliance with as many regulations as possible. So that's something that I wanted to comment as well. I think that to answer this question, there are certain level of approaches to data mapping, and I think that from what we've seen, there is this 20/80 rule, and we can, with a certain technology, and I agree that there are some complexities that are really difficult to automate, but 80% of the processes, the systems, the heavy lifting are things that are usually can be automated. We see that also in larger organizations, and at least the data mapping team will not start from scratch, and you can reduce a lot the headcount that you have there. We see that we can bring out suggestions, add vetting flows, have the organization. We are all in favor of having those owners, those persons of the organization that will vet for what we have done automatically. But by doing that, we are able to uncover insights that are very tricky for human beings to identify. We are able to give you alerts of things that are changing continuously with your tech stack. And yes, there are certain areas that will be very difficult to integrate and automate. No doubt about that, but you can automate 80% of them. This is something that we have seen with larger companies as well. I agree that the larger the organization is, and not, I don't know if it's about the size of the company, it's more about the tech stack of the company. The more modern the tech stack is, meaning cloud-based, using SaaS platforms and so on and so forth, modern databases, the more modern that the organization tech stack is, the easier it is to integrate and to provide them with a real value. The older the organization is, the more you have legacy systems and a mess inside, it is more difficult to do the data mapping. Even so, I think that that's our approach in general. But a question to Justina, like, what did you find missing when you tried those tools? What was the one thing that you would say that you do need and you couldn't get from those tools?
Justina, would you like to respond to that?
Yeah. So, as I mentioned, the integration would take ages for those tools, and also they cannot handle our systems because they have a current setup that can be applicable to specific systems. But if we have like a different one, then it cannot be applicable. So in almost all cases, the API of those tools are not applicable to more complex infrastructure itself.
Got it.
Those was the main reasons.
Okay, so you mentioned Kobi, that there might be some requirement for human intervention at some level at larger, more complicated companies, but you feel that automation can provide some insights that are not really possible by manual means alone in some cases. Is that a fair
I think
characterization?
I'll give you an example. Let's say, the example that I mentioned earlier at the beginning of this webinar, when a company has hundreds of different data sources and lots of hundreds of different processing activities, and each processing activity has its own retention period and policies and different data points, and the consent that you need to collect and make sure that what consent you have for collecting the data, and then the sensitivity of data that you have there, and if you are using or not using the service. So when you have so many variables, right, so many things that you need to analyze, how do you identify the real and important insights that are worthwhile for you to work on? How do you prioritize between those insights even? So even taking this manual work that you have done, putting only that inside the tool, you can get tremendous value because those issues will pop up from the page. You can slice and dice the data, analyze the inputs, get some real insights, and prioritize between them. Even if you are doing it manually, it will not be updated, but that's like for the very least. When you connect it to some sort of an automation, you will have the benefit of seeing the updates if anything changes or require your attention. So, yeah.
Great. So let's step back a bit from data mapping per se. I'm going to ask you a bit more of a general question here, Justina, but of course you can relate to data mapping too. How do you get support from your stakeholders, other people in your company, whether senior or not, and convince them of the need for tools to help support your privacy program? While taking business considerations into account. So how do you get buy-in from across your whole organization, Justina?
So first of all, necessary to mention that Vinted really cares about privacy and data protection of users, employees, and all data subjects, the data we process. So it is not necessary to make a lot of actions to convince the company, which sees the benefit from privacy and data protection itself, and because it creates trust among the users. And to be a trustworthy company is one of the main advantages and main benefits that we can see for now, in the markets. Also, the second thing that helped us is GDPR. As we use principles and rules established in GDPR as a standard, and we operate mostly within the European Union, so it helped us also to convince stakeholders to make actions necessary to be compliant. And also necessary to mention that fines from authorities also helps to motivate. And yeah, so mostly, GDPR helps us to identify risks and to convince that those risks are important and we should deal with them.
Good. Yes. I mean, a cursory look at your website, Istin, it does seem like Vinted is on the the right side here with your privacy policy and cookie banner as such. So I can vouch for that from having a quick look. And I suppose that the GDPR has brought data protection into the popular consciousness a bit more. So you feel that is reflected by senior people in your company. They do. Do you need to help bring other departments on board with privacy? Do people generally understand it, or is that part of your work, encouraging that culturally, as it were?
Yeah, of course, it is part of the work of privacy team. We also spread awareness across the company. We give a lot of trainings for people across the company, but it also seems that the fact that GDPR entered into force somehow provide an ability for people to get more information about privacy rights, and they know more even without additional trainings. But the trainings, of course, and awareness help people to be up to date and to dig deeper into the privacy field.
So what's your experience working with clients on this, Kobi? Do people recognize do you feel that companies are increasingly recognizing the importance of these things? Is the culture changing? You must speak to quite a lot of privacy teams in the in industry.
Yeah.
What's your experience?
So I think that people take it seriously. Like when you talk to people about privacy in an organization, they I don't think there is anyone that will not take it seriously. What we are seeing is that sometimes there is some tension between privacy teams from a legal standpoint that need to demonstrate compliance. They need to demonstrate that they have done everything they needed to do in order to adhere to the privacy laws. It means the privacy approvals, the decision that they have taken. It doesn't necessarily mean building a huge infrastructure. This is from the data from the legal standpoint, they need to be able to demonstrate something. Oftentimes, when you take it and discuss with tech team that do not have privacy engineering side, or you take it with security teams, you take it with data teams, the discussion becomes very technical. And I think that over there you have some tension because the requirement, the needs from the legal standpoint versus what other teams will want to do with this project is sometimes different. So you have this discussion between the data team that wants to do like a data governance project, and you have the privacy legal team that wants to that just need to be able to demonstrate something. So I think that you see some tensions in terms of the understanding of what we actually need to do. It can be resolved with some education, with having this position of privacy engineer within the team that really understand both sides, both worlds. So that's what we are seeing. And oftentimes it creates difficulties in making decisions. The decision-making process becomes a bit more complex. when, for example, you want to add a data mapping solution, which is by nature very intrusive, right? You need to connect and integrate with many systems, touch the data points. You need the CISO in the organization to really understand the value and the benefit of it. Why should we have this solution automated rather than having manual work and put some more labor on it? Risk reward need to be explained, need to be discussed internally. So while there is a big understanding of the need for privacy program inside the organization, there are some questions of how to implement. I hope that really answers the question.
Yes, indeed. Now, you mentioned CISO there, Kobi. So have you got any experience working alongside a security department in Vinted, Justin? How does that relationship work? I often see it said that privacy and security teams should be working closer together. Is there any conflict there between your two departments? Are you on the same page in general?
Actually, we don't have any conflict between our departments, as we are one department, security and privacy. So how do we work together? So first of all, security team is, as any other team, also has its own processes, tools, assets that they use. So first of all, they are also point of contact for data mapping questions. And also what they help us to do is to identify organizational and technical security measures in different assets that we use. And if we don't have any, then they're helping us to have it, to establish. If it's technical measure, then to implement it. If it's organizational measure, maybe we should have, some policy procedure in place. So this is how we are working together. But needless to mention that the privacy team also has privacy engineers. So they are working with anonymization, pseudonymization, encryption. So as we have few professionals that are dedicated for privacy who are looking at privacy from technical perspective and implementing those technical measures. We don't need to have like a very, very, very close collaboration with the security team, but on daily basis, we work together as well. So.
Thank you, Justina. So good to hear that you're on the same page as you're in the same department. There's no reason why that shouldn't be the case, of course, because so much of what those two professions do overlaps. So we have got time for some audience questions now, if you're both happy to get to those. We did have one just a moment ago. You mentioned this sort of 80-20 split, Kobi, between what might be needed at a larger organization with some manual work, some automated work, well, the majority automated in your view. Do you think you'll ever close that gap with AI, machine learning, so on? Are you working on it at Mine? Do you think it will ever be a fully automated process?
So the answer is that I think that the assistance of AI, machine learning can truly become a big factor here in this area, and we already leverage on it in certain capacity, and I'll explain. We believe that we can train, or we already trained modules to analyze certain data sources based on the type of the data source, based on if it's a third-party vendor, based on the legal documents that they have, the context of the source itself, and the context of the organization. So, for example, if I know that I'm talking to an e-commerce company in a certain size, in a certain area, and I know that they are using this tech stack, I compare them to some others, we can already start providing them with the estimation of what potentially exists in almost every data source, and what are the processing activities that might be the ones that they are leveraging or they are working on. So only with that we can establish a baseline. So the 20% itself will not be such a hassle, and we will not make the organization hanging on this area that is like fully manual. So to wrap up, the 80% can be fully automated with integration the classic way. You connect to the data source, you identify, you scan, you find the data point, you embed and add more information to the ROPA. On top of that, you can run the vetting processes, making sure that everything is in place. The 20% can be provided with some machine learning and analysis in terms of the context. You try to understand the context of the system. You give like your best effort estimate. The accuracy is not so bad, I have to say. It's pretty high. It depends on the organization type. If it's a type of organization like airlines, expectable. If we're talking about e-commerce companies, you can anticipate that. If you are talking about companies that are in the financial services and it's super wide, it will be more tricky. So by doing that, you can leverage on machine learning, AI, in order to provide a baseline, even in the areas that are, blind spots to the regular integrations. And of course, you can do even more with that. So I think that this can be like a true factor here when we look into the future.
Thank you. And another question here that is quite interesting. Maybe I'll address this to you first, Justina. It's about special category or sensitive data, different data types. Is it possible for automated solutions to reliably distinguish special category or sensitive data? And Justina, I guess I'll ask you first, as someone who doesn't use automated tools, how do you go about classifying different data types? It sounds like quite a complicated job, I guess.
Yeah, that's a good question though. So while I was listening, Kobi answering about artificial intelligence solution that could be implemented, I was wondering also whether those solutions can actually give us a list of personal data, not all data, but personal data, because identify personal data is rather difficult. Sometimes we are struggling with the question also about, let's say, the color of the item, whether it's personal data or not personal data, or so it is really difficult to identify, and we don't have any, the definite list of criteria. It is based just on knowledge that we have in privacy field and all the guidelines coming from different authorities. Sometimes it's based on feeling as well,
How do you mean? Say more about that, on feeling.
So you see the data element and you're trying to think whether it's possible to identify a person or not by using this only data element. And when you are a professional in privacy field for a while, then you have like that feeling inside.
And instinct for whether a data point is personal data, as it were. Is this something that you think automation can help with in any respect, Kobi, this kind of categorization of data types or identifying what's personal, what's not?
So I think that it depends on the data source. If we're talking about structured data sources, oftentimes it will be definitely possible because those data sources are more expectable. It is easier to understand the context. It is easier to create some set of rules around them. So with those, it is definitely possible. When we're talking about unstructured data sources, when you need to understand the context around the data point, it becomes more tricky, and then machine learning AI will come to the rescue. The question is, it becomes how big the data set, how long it will take. But I believe that this is a matter of time, not of if, but of when.
I suppose what you say there about data sources, I mean, that to have an organized inventory of your assets and data sources is certainly the best starting point for identifying what's personal and categorizing data from that point. So there is another question here that you could have a go at. Any predictions on how recent developments in the EU or US will impact data mapping? We can broaden that out a bit, I think. I don't know if you've been watching developments in the US about the possible federal privacy law there. What's the future in this field of privacy data protection? Do you think things are going to get more complicated as time goes on? Do you want to start this on that one? Yeah, sure, Kobi.
Yeah, so I think that from a vendor standpoint, I believe that the requirement, the need for companies, or the urgency for companies to have something in place, a privacy program in place, will increase. In turn, once they have the need and they will experience it, I believe that that the need for more automation on data mapping will be required. Once you have that, it will push companies, more startups, more investments into this field in order to develop data mapping as a whole. That's what I see.
So there'll be more requirement for companies to be on top of their data, understand what they've got, because the increasing regulatory action and developing regulatory frameworks worldwide.
And I think also, it's there are going to be the fact that it is going to increase and have and we will see it in more states, more a federal law and so on and so forth, is also a symbol, to the fact that probably things will become much more standardized. If it's more standardized, automation can kick in, and you can see more solutions that can really make a big difference for companies.
Interesting. So you think there's a trend towards a convergence, as it were, between countries and states. Is there any views on the current developments worldwide in privacy data protection?
Actually, I only can agree with Kobi that so far it seems that the necessity to have data mapping and privacy program in place is growing and growing very fast. And without automated solutions, companies, if companies will want to be compliant, they will have to spend more money and more time and to hire more people. So it seems that automated solution, as the data is kind of becoming a new oil of this age, it's one of the most applicable solution for the companies, the number one, actually.
So it does seem that way, that we are as close as we're going to get, I think, to a sort of federal privacy law in the US, and nobody quite can predict whether this one will finally make it over the line. But we are seeing more countries adopt GDPR-like privacy laws, and I think you're right that convergence does lend itself as well to automation, because you can run the same processes over different data sets. We do have a bit of a complicated question here. I don't know if you want to have a go at this.
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
So I'll read it out, Kobi, and have a crack at it. given the increased scrutiny on data privacy, PII, and regulations around it, are we heading to a crypto data world where all handshakes among systems, data storage, reporting would be encrypted and only the owner holder of the key could decipher data? Very technical question there. If either of you want to come in on that.
Yeah, with pleasure. So I said that I would love to answer it because only today I met someone that works for such a company, and I think that the technology behind it is super interesting, is mind blowing, and I believe that at some point I really hope that this will turn into something that we will see in the future. It can be a game changer, really profound, and change to the way the internet functions. But I think it's kind of a concept that it's like boiling the ocean, basically. It's so huge, so visionary that I think it will take a very long time until we will see it actually prevail in place for the mainstream. Maybe we'll see some projects here and there for certain companies, for certain POCs, certain companies that you will use it internally, maybe, but seeing it in a large, massive scale, I think will take a long time.
Justina, there's a question here, unless you want to comment on the encryption question there, that I might direct towards you first of all. I don't know if you joined Vinted. Was it already quite a big company at the time? Did you come into, or did you join in the earlier stages?
Yeah, it was a big company because I joined a year ago. So the company already had more than 60 million users.
Well, the question is, and you may still be able to offer advice here, any advice for a small startup looking to get data mapping right from the outset? So what would you say? What are the fundamentals for you of data mapping? Then I'll turn to Kobi on that one too.
So first of all, for a small startup company, I would advise to do appropriate audit and to identify what the company already has. Maybe the company has list of vendors, and maybe it is possible that it is a small company. It is possible to identify the all assets that company uses, all data elements, and to start data mapping just from very beginning, not after a year, 2 or more. Because later on it would be harder and harder to gather more the information if the company is not thinking about automated solutions. And as a startup, probably will have a potential to grow. So it means that the number of processes will increase, number of data will increase as well. So I would suggest to start just from the beginning and to think about the strategy, how you will gather the information later on.
Good. So essentially start early, plan for growth, and think about a strategy in your data mapping. I think the companies that invest in these things early save themselves a lot of headaches down the line, of course. Kobi, any advice for a small company starting out to get data mapping right from the outset?
Yes, of course. Join mine. So just kidding. I think that the biggest advice would be don't go after a very deep, long process of integration, something very heavy. The company is going to change tremendously. So look for a solution that can start small together with you, that does not necessarily, that will provide you with solutions that does not necessarily require deep integrations. Maybe you don't need those integrations, but you only need the tools around it in order to be able to demonstrate your compliance and making sure that you are in control. So I wouldn't run and do those deep integrations and going crazy around that, because it is going to be obsolete very soon if it's a small company that is really growing.
Good. So start simple. You would advise. Don't go crazy, and join mine is your sales pitch there for the end. I think we can allow you that at the end of the session. Well, look, I'm going to wrap up there. Unless you have any final thoughts, Kobi or Justina. Okay. Well, look, thanks so much for joining me. I think it's been very enlightening for me as someone who understands data protection but doesn't do it on the day-to-day, to understand how companies are really implementing this stuff. And yeah, I've really enjoyed talking to you both. So thank you very much to Kobi from Mine and to Justina from Vinted.
Thank you so much.
Thanks
for joining us, everyone.